Hey guys, hope you're well. You are on the Talkwoods. My name's Nat Rich, and today I am with Howard Napper, who is a very new friend of mine. I was introduced to him by, I think it was Stephen, wasn't it?
Yep.
Stephen
Yeah.
introduced us. I should have texted him actually to tell him you were on. Never mind.
All right. Okay.
I'll let him see it afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we are tonight talking about getting up and moving, and we was meant to be sound and silence. And in all honesty, one of my guests couldn't make it, so I changed the subject, not really thinking too much about anybody else because I was just thinking about myself, which is what I usually do. And I changed the subject without asking, and then I thought, let's do movement because this is what Howard's all about. But Howard's actually got a really good thing to talk about because your life is about movement, but unfortunately, it's not working for you at the moment, is it?
Yeah. My awkward moment, my awkward talk. Yeah. No, thank you for having me on. And I was really looking forward to talking about silence. It was one of my favorite subjects. But what I tend to do, I tend to work around what I call three pillars, and I think this is what you were referring to when you were looking at my TED talk. Is there's movement and exercise. Well, movement first of all for me is different from exercise because it's almost like non-exercise activity. You can go to the gym or 4 or 5 times a week and then sit around and do nothing the rest of the time, and that's not so good. So understanding the concept of doing exercise or movement without it being necessarily structured. You know what I mean? So a lot of that I work around, and that's been a big part of my work. I work around food and nutrition as well. But those two pillars really rest for me on rest and restoration. So that's where the meditation comes in, and so it's so important. So that's the foundation, this kind of bedrock of rest and restoration, which I've always thought that most of us, and I work with a lot of athletes as well, and I see this in athletes, is that we're overstimulated, under-restored. So if we can build it, if we can work on that foundation of rest and restoration, which allows you to build up, and then you can start to push your movement, whatever it is that you're doing, work or play. So that's kind of what I do. However, as I just mentioned to you, when I saw that we were going to be doing movement, it kind of freaked me out a little bit because my life has been based a lot around movement, and my background is from yoga. A lot of the stuff that I do when I'm working with clients is around movement patterns, so movement patterns that are blocked. And I have a problem because I caught COVID, very early on, around about 9 months ago, and I'm classed now as what we call a long hauler. And it's really knocked me. And when you said to me movement, because my movement has gone, without playing the violins, this is just because of our talk, obviously, and it might be interesting to some people. Before we went into lockdown, I was feeling great. I do a martial art, I play tennis, I do yoga. I was feeling fantastic. I thought, okay, this will be a couple of weeks, and I'll be back, and won't miss it too much. I'm going to do all my exercise at home and everything. 3 days in, I was in my bed, completely out, and I could not move. I literally could not move, and I was sleeping about 18 hours a day. I got to say, there were a couple of nights there that I thought, if this could really go bad, if it gets worse through the night. And I thought, is this how I'm going to go? Anyway, cut a long story short, I come out the other end and I can't move. I literally can't move. I've got nerve damage in my right shoulder. I've got nerve damage in my right leg. I walk up the stairs. I got to lie down and I'm exhausted. So I started to think about rebuilding my movement. I mean, it was extraordinary because for somebody in such a short time to go from, feeling so good about myself and so identified, I really identified with the fact that I could move. And we were talking about my age, I'm 61 years old.
Which I cannot believe you are 61 years old. I was saying you don't look like you're like literally almost 50 max.
Well, part of that, I think, a big part of that has always been about the fact that I can move. We talk about age. When we led us on, just when we were chatting just before, we have 3 ages. So I consider 3 ages anyway. We've got our chronological age, which really just only goes in one direction, just keeps going up. And then you've got your biological age, and then you've got your subjective age. And your biological age isn't really dependent on your chronological age. It's really dependent on your lifestyle. right? So what you eat, what you do, and all the good stuff.
It's like the
And
biometrics that you get in like the Virgin gyms where you go and stand on a machine and it tells you.
Well, you can do. The biomarkers. So you measure biomarkers and you measure things like flexibility, blood pressure, eyesight. There's a whole range of biomarkers. But if you go to one institute that measures biomarkers and you go to another institute, they'll measure different. There's no standard set of biomarkers. So you can get somebody to turn around and say, look, you're 65 years old, but biologically you're 25, or vice versa. Right, and you go somewhere else and it'll be a slightly different age. So the fact is you don't need to know the age range that your biological age range. It depends on how you feel, right? If I feel younger than I am, then that's good news, and that's how I'd always felt. Now that affects the most important out of those three things is really your subjective age.
Mm-hmm.
The age that you feel, and it's not just to be in denial about your age, right? It's the fact that you feel pretty good for your age, right? So that subjective age that's quite subjective because, well, it's subjective age, obviously, but you can feel a lot longer. It doesn't have to be necessarily a marker of how young you feel, but it's your biological age has such a profound effect on your subjective age. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So for example, I've always said, I work with a lot of people that have conditions of bad back. If you get up in the morning and your back's out, instantly you feel 10 years older because you're walking down the stairs like this, So that biological sensation, that biological experience is clearly going to affect your subjective age. Yeah. So for me, it's a big blow, and we can, I don't know. I'm still in the process of building it back up. So that's
when
kind of where I am now.
When it comes to age, like for me personally, I always joke and I always say I'm 26 for life. And the reason I said that was when I had a Virgin Gym membership long before COVID, and my biometrical or whatever it was age was like 26. And when I used to get in cabs in a lot of Ubers, and I used to talk to them like, I always make conversation, and they'd always say, "And how old are you?" And I'd say, "How old do you think I am?" And no one ever said anything other than 26. So I was like, I must.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm just going to keep flying with the 26.
I think you should just stay with that. You get away with that. That's fine. Yeah.
But I also realized that when I say to people, I don't just say I'm 26, because for me, I know that's a lie, and I don't want to lie. But I know that my molecules are listening. So I've done a lot of work with Masaru Emoto. I know, the water and the body count. So I know that our bodies are listening all the time. Yes. So I always say I'm 26 for life. So like, it's almost a joke when I say it to people and they laugh, and I don't really have to go into it any more than that. But it just kind of makes me feel good, and it makes me actually feel happy when I say it. It's not because there's anything wrong with being 36, which is what I actually I've got nothing wrong with being 36. It's a good age. It doesn't affect me at all. It's just that if I can play around with my age at this age, and if I can keep myself younger in any way, it's more of a preventative than oh my God, I'm 36. It's more like, it's okay to just like see what I can achieve. And I honestly do feel like it's made a difference with how I feel about myself, even though I've had back problems, which is there for a number of reasons, but mentally and the way I carry myself, it is more like a 26-year-old. But I do feel I can move. Like if I feel like I'm waking up as a 26-year-old, they're kind of the days I want to go for a run. But if I don't feel like that when I wake up, you're right. I don't want to go for a run. Don't feel as though I can move as much.
Exactly. No, there you are. You're kind of playing around with your subjective age. I mean, again, we're kind of very close to denial here, but the fact is, if you have that mentality, if you have that mindset of feeling young, I mean, the problem is that as you age, it's not so much that you feel that you're aging, it's that you feel that you're not young anymore. You feel that you can't move. And if you can move, I mean, movement, this is where movement is so important. If you've got that freedom of movement, you feel fantastic. Yeah. And subjectively, you're just going along with it. So, then it comes down to, well, what is that? Because we're all obviously moving the whole when I say we're all obviously moving, right now we understand that most of us are sitting most of the time. And that becomes a big problem. So what do you do then if you're sitting 8 hours a day, which is the average? Some people are sitting even longer, even 12, 14 hours a day, and then add in 8 hours of sleep as well. Then that's not a lot of movement. Traditionally, it used to be about 2.5, 3 hours. So we're obviously moving less. And as I said, then what happens is you wake up on a Tuesday and you decide to go to the gym at 12 o'clock, or, and you do the same again on Thursday, and you might go again on Saturday. So you've been to the gym 3 times that week, but that's not enough, because all the rest of the time we've just been sedentary the whole time. So starting to think about, right, what can I start to do? Where does my movement come from? I really like the idea, and this is what helped me when I was recovering from COVID. Starts with the breath. For me, movement starts with the breath, because that's where we move, no matter what situation we were in. When I was lying in, as I said, in the COVID experience, I could not move. I literally could not move. I didn't have any energy at all, but I was conscious of my breath throughout the whole experience. And I think that was a big factor in my recovery. So using my lungs, I use a lot of breathing exercises anyway. So,
in a particular, because there's a big fascination with breath at the moment. So I just, is there a particular breath work that you were doing? Because every time I've been for a breath session, I've done loads of them now. There's holotropic breathing, and then there's there's loads of different types. Were you taking something specific, or did you just kind of make something up?
Okay, so I could feel my lungs were becoming inflamed. So for me, I mean, at this point, it was very early on, so nobody knew about it. There was no kind of medical advice about, being prone. Now a lot of people breathe prone if they've got COVID, so they're lying on their front. All I knew is I had to keep my lungs elastic. I use a number of different breathing exercises. Obviously, from a yoga background, I use a lot of different pranayama techniques, but I knew I just had to keep the air moving in my lungs, because I wasn't moving around much. So I just kept expanding my lungs, using the inhalation, letting the exhalation go down completely, and just being conscious of that. So it's very much a breath that I use in meditation anyway. So I was trying to almost do 2 things at the same time. I was trying to remain in my body, because I was pretty freaked, I got to tell you. I mean, it was, I thought maybe that was going to be it. And it was a real shock to me, because, as I said, 2 or 3 days beforehand, I was fine.
Yeah.
And I obviously at this point I did get it quite badly. I mean, different people, other members in my household didn't get it as badly. So it affects everybody very differently. But at that point, I was very conscious of using the breath, and then starting to get that expansion into my lungs. So I think that my lungs itself never really closed up as much as they could have done. And I don't know, obviously, but I think I contribute that the breathing exercises as an important thing about keeping the plasticity of my lungs. And then when I started to get up and started to move, I could not walk. I couldn't. The muscles in my right leg weren't firing. I couldn't understand it. I get up and move out of bed, and I was like, "Why is my right leg dragging on the floor?" It was bizarre. So then I was having to teach my right leg to move, and then I'm thinking about, well, what muscles are weak, and then starting to get into walking. So that's always, for me, when I'm working with somebody, it goes from the breath to walking, which is really our first real movement.
I've had that experience before when I don't know how it happened. I had sciatica for a while, and then it was getting quite bad, and my friends were like, just go and get an MRI. And I had an MRI, and they said, oh, you've got just a slipped disc. And I'm like, a herniated disc. And I'm like, not really sure what that means, but I thought, okay, I'll figure it out. So I went to bed that night, woke up the following morning paralyzed, couldn't walk, had to get rushed to hospital. They flew me to the UK because I was living in Ibiza at the time in Spain. Then I flew to London, and my friend was there with a wheelchair the whole way through. I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Got there, crutches, went to Harley Street and had a check. And the guy was just like, we need to do an X-ray. And I'm like, no, I've got my MRI scan. It's like 300 quid on Harley Street. I was like, no, I've got my MRI already. And he's like, no, we need to do a full X-ray. Luckily he did, because he found out that I had 2 spinal fractures, a twisted pelvis and 2 slipped discs. And he's like, how did you do this? And I'm like, I have no idea. And from that, I was in bed for it was just over 6 months for the whole time. And I had to drag myself to the toilet. It was horrible. And I couldn't, once I finally realized I was starting to walk, because when you put your foot flat to the floor, there's like a strain all the way up the back of my leg, up through the back of my bum, up through where my coccyx sits. And it was just like a real intense pain. So I couldn't even put a straight leg down, and having to train and having to train myself to walk again was so painful. But I don't think if I'd have not learned to meditate before having that scenario, I don't think I would have been in the same space, because mentally everyone's like, you seem fine. And I'm like, I'm in bed meditating most days or reading, like, and it really helps. But I wasn't really working on the breath. I was just numbing my body completely and then just laying there feeling like I'd dissolved into the bed and then just going into meditation from there. But I guess the breath, you know, there's a lot of stuff around Wim Hof now, isn't there? There's so many people doing Wim Hof. I've actually started a few weeks ago. It's incredible if you're thinking about even exercising, starting with something that's manageable, like a Wim Hof scenario with the breath.
No, I mean, he's the real deal. So I said that again.
Have you done the cold showers and the cold?
Yeah, no, it's cold weather thermogenesis. So, you know, I think he's an extraordinary man. He's the real deal as far as I'm concerned. He's a modern day yogi. I've got a lot of respect for him. And obviously what he's done for the breath has been fantastic. You know, it's kind of become the new meditation. So, I mean, I do work in a slightly different way than he does. You're still there, Nat? Nat, you still there? I think I might have lost you. Let's see. You're in the show. Either I've lost you.
I literally.
Was that you or me?
That was me. I'm so sorry. We're still live. It's just like literally, I could hear noise in the background, so I turned off what I thought was another screen and pressed the wrong cross.
That's okay. So I thought I'd lost myself.
No.
Where were we? Wim Hof. Yeah. So he does extraordinary stuff. But I think what's great is that it's really opened up this kind of interest in the breath. You know, I work in a slightly different way than he does with the breath. It's a lot more kind of yoga based, but he's taken a certain aspect of it and gone with it really well, and I think he's fantastic. So that's great. But it shows you where for me it's where movement really starts, and then it starts to get into walking. And this can be applied to anybody, because you know what the problem is, and this is the same I see with a lot of the athletes that I've worked with, is that although you're fit and you may have worked the body, you've lost some of the body's intelligence, right? So it's almost, I mean, this has happened with certain tennis players, and they've almost had to relearn movement, you know. And if we're relearning movement at any point in our life, it really, for me, it's got to start from the breath, because then everything else we use it in martial arts. Everything else then comes from the breath. So the movement comes from the breath. So when you're moving, everything comes out of that. And you get power from the breath. So if you're reconstructing your serve as a tennis player, then when you start to use the breath and you start to get more power in your serve, just because your breath is creating fluid movement within the body. And it's that fluid movement, it's that kinetic chain that actually makes the ball go further, not the amount of muscles you got in your arms. You know, it's not about that. So it's that fluidity of the breath, which is a lovely concept to start to move out from.
A friend, sorry, go on. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, no, that's it.
I was going to say, a friend of mine, I was talking to him at the beginning of COVID. We dated very briefly, but one of his things he was telling me about with his clients and stuff was really fascinating. He said he came up with this idea of put 2 things in and take 2 things out. Don't worry about the weights. Right. Don't worry about the muscles. Don't worry about how far you can stretch. Just take 2 things out and add 2 things in. So he said to me, what do you want to take out? So I took out sugar and sitting for as long as I was on a laptop, and I replaced it with way more water. I do drink, I mean, I only drink distilled water with added minerals back in, but that's all I drink, and fresh chai every day. But I wanted to up that. So I added in more water, and I added in a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. And then I was doing very little training with him, but it was just, I could not believe, just from having more water, which is the fluid, obviously, and walking as much as that every single day, making sure without fail I was going for. I remember walking up near Morrison's where we live, and there's a slight incline on the hill. And usually when I'm with my bags, I go for a walk with my dad. That was kind of one of our walks. At the end of like 2 weeks, I remember I just got to the top of the hill and I'm like, I didn't even realize, and I'd realized I'd pretty much glided up the whole hill, and I was noticing my body strength just from more walking and more water, regardless of anything else, which blew my mind, really.
Yeah, it's funny because after, so I started doing the walking, and I got a park across from where I live, and I couldn't even walk around one lap of the park in the first, but I knew I had to get walking. So that was the first lockdown. So throughout the first lockdown, I was just building up and progressing on my walking. Then when the end of the first lockdown came, I got back into some of the training that I was doing, and I worked with some of the guys, and particularly in the martial arts that I do, and we started doing some of the pad work and using the bags and all this thing. I couldn't move. I had no power in what it was I was doing, but I was so frustrated. So I was starting to do all this stuff, and I again, it just took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Then lockdown 2.0 came in, all right? And then I thought, right, okay, walking again. So I went back to the walking, and it was only the walking that was actually getting me any further, because when I went back and I started to do what I was doing before, even though it was pretty functional what I was doing, it's very fluid what I was doing, it was still one step too far for me. So it was the walking. I went back to the walking, and I kept on thinking the only way that I'm progressing actually is through the walking. Mm-hmm. And I've literally been walking. It's been great. I'm not using my car, which is fantastic. And I'm literally walking every excuse that I can get to walk now, I'll walk. Yeah. So if I've got to go and do a shop, I'll go and walk. If I've got to go, at the moment, there's not much to do anyway. So I'm making sure that I go out for a walk at least for a good couple of hours a day.
Yeah. Oh, you're only meant to be an hour, isn't it? Make sure you don't have a cup of coffee while you're walking.
Well, maybe I'm a little bit, maybe it's necessity. Maybe it's part of my, I can claim that it's my healing or whatever. Exactly. This is my medicine. So it really is. It is my medicine, and I see. Yeah, I live in central London.
Okay, so yeah, it's easy to walk around, and I think it's lovely in lockdown walking
around.
It's
it is. I mean, the funny thing is, obviously, I've noticed over the last couple of months how many more people. So everybody else now is walking.
Yeah.
So, because what else you got to do, right? I mean, you can't go and see a movie. You can't go to a gallery or whatever it is that we do, a party or whatever. So everybody, the parks are packed, and everybody goes around their little kind of loop. And that's great, and I think again I got to think but it's weird. I mean, I was behind somebody today just watching them the way they walk, because I was watching people walking, and just noticing again patterns. It's just, I don't know, it's a habit for me. Mm-hmm. So just looking at people from behind as they're walking and seeing people's movement patterns and seeing how fragmented they are. And it's funny because I was doing that today. I wasn't obviously working, but I just look around and see the way that people move, and we can't fundamentally move. This is a big problem for us, because for whatever reason, there can be a number of different reasons why this breaks up the patterns that we have. But if we can start to get back into some very fluid movement patterns from walking, swimming is another great one. So I always, if I had the opportunity now, I'd probably be starting to swim. From swimming, maybe going into running. And then from running into more complex movement patterns, you start to think of things like martial arts, like yoga, things where you're starting to pick up on some of these movements, because fundamentally we've only got a certain way that we can move. We can go into flexion, we can go into extension, we can go into rotation. That's pretty much it, right? And then we can go into inversion. So we can go upside down. We've got 6 movements within the hip joints. We've got 6 movements within the leg joints. So once you started those fundamental movements and you're getting the movement patterns right there from something like walking, then you can start to apply it to more complex movement structures and movement exercises.
Yeah.
Which gets, then if you want to do capoeira, if you want to do martial art, if you want to do whatever it is, then you can start to get in and do some of the other stuff as well. There's a guy called Ido Patel. Ido Patel. If anybody ever gets a chance to have a look at the way that he moves, it's phenomenal. I mean, you see when somebody moves so fluidly, it looks so easy.
Just type
Ido Portal. Ido Patel. Portal. Ido Patel. And you see the way that he moves. It's very functional, his movement. But it's extraordinary to see somebody when they're so fluid, they make it look so easy. Yeah. And then you try it, and it's so hard. I mean, just a simple movement. So, for example, sitting on the floor. I'm on the floor right now, and then sitting on the floor and getting up without using your hands. Just try that movement.
There's a guy called, have you seen Tony Riddle? He's a friend of mine. Well, I know him from Ibiza.
Sounds
Natural
familiar.
movement. Yeah, he's doing a lot of like, his whole house. I mean, in Ibiza and obviously in London, his whole house, they don't have any furniture to sit down on, and you know, his kids like are climbing all the time. They're just really a fitness family. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, so I have movement is huge. It obviously is. In my mindset, sometimes I get really excited about the work that I do, and I love what I do.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to pull me away from the laptop sometimes because I don't feel like it's work, and I feel like I'm really efficient getting things done, and it's a real chore. But to get my energy going, I've started just doing a run around the block in the mornings, and it's not far by any stretch. But when I've been running, there's two things that somebody's mentioned to me in the last couple of weeks. One was, are you meant to run with your heel to your foot or your foot to your heel? Like, there's a certain way of running with your feet? And then also somebody mentioned about running and keeping your mouth closed when you're running and breathe through your nose, which I found I tried to do it. That was so hard.
Okay, two very interesting points there, actually. So heel strike is when you walk. When you walk, your heel hits first, and then from there, the foot spreads out. Yeah. But when you run, the idea is to go with the front of the foot first. So you're not heel striking. Yeah. And we've got as much power in our foot there as a kangaroo, actually. Right. That's the extraordinary thing. But it's obviously a lot shorter, so we don't get as much leverage. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of power to propel us forward. Mm-hmm. I developed something, I really wanted to play around with that whole concept of the front of the foot striking rather than the heel, and use that for runners, because a lot of people naturally heel strike, because as I said, for walking, we do that. So what I started to use was a running machine where, just a regular running machine, put it on slowly to begin with, and then start to move around on it. So you'd start to go sideways and then start to go backwards and start to move around. Once you start to run backwards, the only way that you can run, you can't heel strike then, you can go onto the front of your foot.
Yeah.
You have to go on the front of your
while
foot.
It's moving, you mean, while the treadmill's moving?
So I lost you for a second.
So you're saying you're on a treadmill.
Why do I keep on I think when something comes up, let me get rid of this thing. It might be. Yeah, sorry, I lost you just for a second. Go ahead.
It's all natural. It's fine. Don't worry. We're here.
Yeah. Good.
Good. It's just like a chat around a kitchen table. I don't mind.
Perfect.
I really like it. Say, are you on a treadmill? Is what you're saying? And
on a treadmill, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I call it Tread 360. So what I do was use 360 degrees, because most everybody runs on a treadmill like this, right? And that's great. It's the biggest. The extraordinary thing about treadmill is one of the oldest pieces of equipment in a gym. I mean, been around for the longest periods of time. It's one of the most used pieces of equipment in gyms, hotels, homes, and everything. And everybody just uses it in one way, and it's pretty boring, right? But then you start to move. You start to do this thing where you start to turn around. Obviously, I can't demonstrate it now. We haven't got a treadmill. But if you can imagine, you're starting to now use 360. So you're running backwards, and then you're starting to do various things. So I was very interested in breaking the confined structure of movement. Yeah. Even on something like a treadmill, you can do that with. It was amazing results that I started to get with people, not only with athletes as well, but also with people that were having problems with movement, because you'd build up. It was also working with proprioception. It's your sense of your body in space, and for somebody to run forward first and then to start to think about moving sideways, subjectively, it was a big thing, but it
I can
frees
see
you
myself
up.
on my ass right now.
I know.
Over in the gym and just being like,
and I'm not. And one of the reasons why it didn't really take off, because there was a lot of health and safety concerns around it anyway. So you can see where I thought, oh, this was going to be the new Zumba. I thought this is great, but no, it didn't go anywhere. But the thing is, I'm not recommending people to go and try this at home, obviously. Don't try this at home. But you can use the sides, you can hold on, and you can start to move very, very slowly, but even at a gentle walking pace, going sideways and then turning around. And again, it was just so liberating mentally, because you're freeing up the body.
Yeah.
And it was just, I love doing it. I hate working on a treadmill. I don't really like, going on a treadmill to run. But as soon as I started adding this in, it was like, whoa, okay, well, what can we do now? Where can we go with that? So that's just something about getting onto the front of your feet. It really taught you to get onto the front of the feet. The other thing you mentioned there was about breathing through your nostrils when you're running.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we use this in yoga. It's pranayama walking, right? So it's what you can do. Rather than, when you run, you need oxygen for your muscles. Mm-hmm. Your muscles need oxygen. So you've obviously got to draw oxygen in. And if you'll see it with runners, obviously they've got a lot of times, they've got their mouths wide open because they're drawing extra oxygen in, not through the nostrils. When you draw breath in through the nostrils, however, there's nitric oxide in the nose. And that nitric oxide, when that's drawn in through the nostrils, oxygenates the body far more effectively than just bringing it in through the mouth. Okay. So we're designed to breathe through our nose. We eat through our mouth and we breathe through our nose. So it's pretty simple to remember, but a lot of people have got the mouth open and they're breathing. If you need extra oxygen, then bring it in. However, as you said, virtually impossible when you're running because you do need so much more oxygen. However, try it just walking.
Right. Okay. That I should have started there because I got halfway down the street and I'm like,
no. Yeah. But try it walking. Just walk. Yeah. I mean, you can do this with somebody with you, but you got to start off by saying, look, let's just do 10 minutes where we're not going to talk to each other and we're just going to walk. Or you can do this on your own, obviously, and you don't need to talk to anybody anyway, but be conscious, lightly close the mouth and breathe through the nostrils. Take some Kleenex with you as well, because you're probably going to have to, at some point, you're going to have to clear your nose as well. Mm-hmm. But it's powerful. It's powerful because you're oxygenating the body. Most people are mouth breathers.
Yeah.
So when you're mouth breathing, you're not bringing in the nitric oxide. So the nitric oxide it's a gas that's in the nostrils.
Right.
And it's when you're bringing in the oxygen with the nitric oxide that it goes into the cells more effectively. So it's about absorption. So it's the way that the oxygen gets absorbed into the cells. So it's a huge benefit. And again, I'm really glad you said that because that's something that I would add in. Breathing from that original foundation, then starting to get into walking, and then walking with being conscious of the breath, right? And now you have a walking meditation.
Yeah, I was just about to say walking.
Right. This is the thing, because now you're conscious, right? You're not just there, just kind of unconscious, So now walking becomes a meditation, and when it becomes a meditation, then it takes on it's
a whole different form.
Yeah, it's powerful.
I do a lot of that in Ibiza when I used to live just by the seaside, so I go for a really long, nice walk, just on my own, and just concentrating on every step.
What about a nice long short walk? What about short walk? Try this one if you want to add in another one, right? So the length of a room or the width of a room, and take 10, 15 minutes to walk from one side of the room to the other.
Really?
That's beautiful.
Oh, wow.
That's phenomenal.
I'm going to try this.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. So set yourself a space, right? This is a meditation. It's a walking meditation. It's
everyone at home is trying this as well.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. Oh yeah, no, I can't. I want to go faster. I want to go stronger. No. How about if you just set yourself a short distance? Actually, the last time I did this with a group in Ibiza, and we set it. There was a beautiful courtyard, and I can't remember how long we said it, but we were just like, I don't think we even put a time to it, actually. I said, right, okay, there was about 15 of us. And we were all just going to walk across the courtyard and just see how long it would take us. And literally, again, so the heel strike comes down and then the foot moves, and then you start to take, then you get the weight going down into the foot, then you transfer the weight into that foot, and then all of a sudden you're starting to move. But that has hopefully taken you about a minute and a half to just do that movement.
Wow.
That's phenomenal. That's another great one.
I've done slow walks, quite a lot of slow walks before, and the foot, like, not as slow as that across the living room. But I remember one of the interns that came to work with me last year, or just before, it was a couple of months before COVID, and just incredible, absolutely incredible mind, super fast talker, and she was so empowered. And by the end of the day, halfway through the day, I said, you know what? I don't want you to do the job that I gave you to do. I want you to create something. So I gave her a project, and I said, sell it to me. Tell me. And it was all about diversity and stuff. It was a lot before all of Black Lives Matter. This was an area I didn't really know much about. She was so passionate. So I said, do me a favor, scrap what I've given you today. I want you to go away and make me a pack and tell me what I'm missing as a white woman in my business, why I'm not diverse enough, why it's not cultured enough. Tell me what you think I need to add to this to make it more acceptable.
Yes.
Face lit up. She's like, oh my God. So she basically went and did this project for me. She'd smashed it in like 4 hours. She'd presented it to me. It was phenomenal. But her excitement was so intense. And I said to her, let's go for a walk. And I walked with her, and I walked and it was around Ministry of Sound where I was working.
Yeah, right.
And I walked so slowly, as I usually would when I'm on my own. And I walked with her, and I saw the struggle it was for her to go, and she was just over 6 foot. So she's a little bit taller than me. I'm 5'10". She's just over 6 foot, big girl. And she was just like, oh my gosh, it's really difficult. But we walked really slowly. And by the time we'd finished and
for her to slow down, she was slowing down.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Just to bring her down, just to slow her down. And I was like, whenever you've got a really good idea, just take the idea for a walk and come back and then sit with it and see. And she was a different person after the walk. She's just like, and the energy had just solidified. The words that she was speaking she's very intelligent anyway. She's an amazing girl. But the words just were like bullets when she was saying, opposed to like, it was just soft and gentle. And her entire energy changed. And I'd only ever seen it on myself from doing that, but never had I taken someone for a walk with me. And the difference was phenomenal. And I was just like, wow, this is a major thing. But also, with some people, there was a guy who was very good at movement and stuff, and he had a thing about putting a bit of tape over, this sounds horrendous, but putting tape over your mouth when you sleep.
Yes.
And so your mouth is continuously, because when I wake up in the morning, it's like the sponge fairy's bin. I was like, my mouth is
right. Your mouth breather. I do that.
Yeah, and he put tape over his mouth, and he said that you can start to sleep and have a pattern of breathing through your nose, and it's a healthy.
You can do that. I won't get sellotape. You just get a surgical tape, right? You get and you can do this at night. Again, a couple of things here. So you can do that, and you just put it across your mouth.
Yeah.
If you wake up in the middle of the night and your mouth is dry, you can guarantee you're breathing through your mouth.
Yeah.
And then if you're lying on your back, then obviously all of a sudden the jaw drops back, and that's when it's going to start to snore.
Yeah.
So keeping the mouth closed and breathing through the nostrils, again, you're going to oxygenate the body through the. Now take that, and you can do this now. I did this with a couple of clients just recently, where we did that outside in the park. Had tape. But what you can do now is you just put your COVID mask on, right? So you can go for a walk. So if you're struggling, if you're a mouth breather and you want to walk and start really getting the breath in through the nostrils, just put a bit of tape on, and if you feel a bit conscious about that, then just put your mask over the tape, and then you're away. Nobody sees you got the tape on your mouth.
You're like, thanks, Boris.
Yeah, exactly. Some consolation. But even with what you were saying about the girl, it reminds me of one of my favorite sayings. It's from Gandhi. I'm sure you've heard it before. More to life than increasing its speed. And that is it. That is a thing. Slow down. It's again, we're overstimulated, under-restored. And when we slow down, it's a whole other world out there. It really is. It's fantastic.
It's so different. I've got ADHD, and I am extremely creative in terms of like business ideas. My mind is constantly creating ideas.
Yeah.
I have to just write a book of them and just to leave them to one side, because I'm just constantly engaged. And you might be able to help me on this actually. One of my problems is that when I meditate or I do like a yin yoga or something, and I really relax, feel great, but the ideas come quicker and faster. So I create this space and more comes in. And what I'm struggling to do is find a balance between basically being far more chilled out and not having that amount of ideas. And I'm also psychic as well. So when I really relax and I'm into my meditation,
it's like radio station in your head. Sure.
Literally get through a whole number of different spirits and frequencies, and I'm like, oh my God, this needs to be chill. Do you say there's anything out there that can help me find
that's really interesting. Okay, so the thing is, also, do you keep a pad by the side of your bed, because when you're falling asleep, that's when ideas come as well. So and even in the shower, there's certain.
They come all the time.
this is the thing. This is the thing about that state, that relaxed state, this meditative state. This is why it's so powerful, because it's not only the state of healing. It's a state of growth, right? So this is an anabolic state. Catabolism is breaking down, and this is when we're overstimulated and under restored. We're breaking down more than we're building up. And most of the diseases that we have in our environment right now are degenerative in nature, meaning that we're breaking down rather than building up. Right. But we can, as we were saying earlier on, there's certain things we can do, our lifestyles, that we can actually build up. When we're constantly in this state, this building up state, we're in this, when we're in this meditative state, when we're in the present moment, let's put it that way, because it's always hard to describe. When we're in a present moment awareness, we're in a catabolic state where we're building up. We're in a state of growth, we're in a state of healing, but we're also in a state of creativity. Because when we're in fight or flight, we're in survival. And the decisions that we make when we're in survival mode are often out of fear. And that's not really a state of creativity. However, when we come into this meditative state, this is where everything goes whoosh, right? Because I'm not like this. I'm not just in this survival state. Now I talk about blue sky thinking or out of the box thinking. I mean, it's gone. I mean, everything's gone. Now we've got the universe. It's just coming to us, right? Which is great, and that's fine, you know. And most of the time, most people think, as you get into meditation, oh, aren't I supposed to be sitting there with nothing in my head? No, I've been meditating for 25 years. I've never had a meditative experience where I've sat there and I've had nothing in my head. I haven't thought of anything. There's always, my head starts going. But the thing is, I mean, if you want to capture thoughts, if there's something in there where you think is quite valuable and you want to hold on to this your next big idea, then that's another issue. But if it's one thought flowing after another, that's fine. That's what the mind does. That's the beauty of the mind, is that it thinks, right? But it's not who we are. We're not our thoughts. Our mind thinks, my eyes see, my ears hear, my mind thinks. Right, but what we're able to do is allow that to flow like a river. So one thought after another after another. What we don't want is the eddies and the whirlpools on the side, where one thought keeps going round and round and round in our head, which
we drown in our own thoughts.
Torture, I've lost you again. Let me close it.
It's all right.
Keep on getting interrupted by this little box, but okay. So you get the idea. So the flowing thoughts is actually fine. What we're able to do, though, is once you start to move into the body and you start to use the body, because the body works on a very different level than the mind. So once we start to move into the body, we can drop beneath the level of thought. So if you think of it like a river running, if the water's running like this, then that's fine. As long as it's fluid, that's okay. That's what my mind's doing. And I drop down into this space beneath the level. Well, this is it. This is kind of what, again, it's, we get trapped in the words. We can call it silence, but is it really silence? It's probably beyond silence.
I think the void.
The void, stillness, whatever we want to space, whatever we want to call it. There's this, the thing is, when we come into the present moment, we drop into this, something that opens up, right? So the fact that we've got the thoughts, that's fine. We can let that keep on. And I'm very similar to you. So I've always had to struggle with this. My thoughts are going. And likewise, I like to think of myself as a creative, right? So I've always got these great ideas. But I need to get out of that from time to time to really act on those ideas. Because I need to find that stillness and then go, right, okay, fine. Where do I go from here? So dropping into that space, into that stillness, into the silence, so that's the power of meditation.
There's so many, for me, I've had to really reduce the external influence, is what I'm going to say. Even I did that before COVID, before this lovely world show that we've got right now. I gave up drinking and alcohol, like obviously drinking and alcohol, gave up alcohol, gave up drugs, gave up sex, gave up social media, all these different things that just weren't serving me, and my life got better and better. But then when COVID came, I was so glad that I didn't have all the distractions of every social media channel telling me what was going on and all of that stuff. I still had a number of like apps on my phone that were pinging here and there. And I've really had to limit myself to the amount of groups that I'm in. And I'm about to get rid of WhatsApp this weekend because of their new terms, because I'm just not accepting the extra snooping. That's going to go, and probably tomorrow now.
And you and a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, see you later. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I've just spent the whole day getting everything from my Google Drive onto Dropbox and moving everything away from Google. I'm doing the best I can to kind of take all of this out of the big tech, but in short, what I'm doing is I'm minimizing the amount of ways I can be distracted at the same time. So with me being a digital assassin, I'm like, right, where else have you got me? The only thing I really have at the moment that is a distractor really is my love of Telegram, because I'm in some really interesting groups and I've got a massive love about cryptocurrencies, and so in amongst all the cryptocurrencies becomes all the interesting stories and the conspiracy theories and then all the digital stuff. And it's quite interesting, but that's a distractor for me. But I can't begin to imagine a Telegram the way mine's quite active, plus a WhatsApp, plus all of the multiple emails, plus Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat. I can't get my head around where that must be taking people right now because of the extra influence. And then on top of that, you have a bit of a scary global situation, and then all your feelings that you may not have yet dealt with. I feel like we make it way harder than we actually need to do. And what we really could do well with is taking the cutbacks and saying, right, what can go? There's like I don't know what her name is, because I'm not on Instagram, but I think is it like Mrs. Hinge or something? There's a woman that does like cleaning stuff.
Right.
And she has this like energy way of clearing stuff. Like she says, you know, if it doesn't make you feel amazing, like get rid of it. It's pretty much like clearing out your wardrobe. But I think we kind of need to do that digitally. If it's not going, oh my God, it's a yes, it's a no. And getting rid of that, and because these tips that you're telling me right now are for me to do. If I'm walking, you know, with my, you know, heel first, and I've got my tape, and I'm just, you know, I'm super chilled, and I come back and I'm like, thank you for that, feeling great, and then it's ping 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 on my phone. It's such an instant difference, and it's we are in control of that decision every single day to stop that, but it's how willing are we to stop the noise?
Yeah, exactly. We spoke before, and I apologize to you because I said I do no social media, so that's a conscious choice. So I avoid social media like the plague. You know, the thing is, we got to understand is we come from tribes, right? This is basically, we were probably in a tribe of about 250 people. That's probably where we were happiest. And what was concerned us at that point was only really what was a 1 day's walk away. You know, if it was 1 day's walk away, that would what be important. If it was any further, it wasn't even relevant.
Yeah.
And the problem is now that we still, in the same way, we feel that something that's even happening on the other side of the world is in that 1 day away space. Do you know what I mean? We're still really, that's kind of really where we should be concerned, but we've got all of this information coming into this space. So our bandwidth, you know, if you think when we were in a tribe, we're hanging out in a small tribe, and there was 1 day away, the news from what was happening over there, the water hole had dried up, there was a chicken over there, or whatever it is, all of that stuff was, but now we've got all of the information of the world coming into that kind of amount of bandwidth that we really have.
At all times of the day.
Of all times of the day. Exactly. So
like,
there's a lot of noise there, a lot of noise. And it really is, I do think of it almost like bandwidth, because I think we've only got a certain amount of bandwidth. And then that's what I'm always very conscious of.
Yeah.
So trying to limit that, and again, go back to Gandhi with that saying, there's more to life than increasing its speed. And I'd say there's more to life than trying to increase its bandwidth as well. Because, you know, it's unsustainable. This is the problem. So we're overstimulated, under-restored. We're constantly being stimulated, and we're not thinking about the rest and restoration. So this is where I think now, again, it moves in two different, you know, from what I've always noticed about the world kind of moves in two different directions. Yes, there's more people moving out and trying to push it even further and go further, but there's more people moving towards things like meditation. We've got this movement moving in the opposite direction as well. Your choice is which way do you want to go?
And it is that it's a tough choice. It's a tough choice for people, because I think
it is.
they attach to the choices, you know. And I won't lie, obviously giving up drugs meant I didn't go out in the same circles. Giving up alcohol meant I went out in no circles, and then giving up, you know, sex and social media, it meant my circles getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
But I was willing to face the loneliness, that temporarily loneliness. It wasn't it all the time, but I was willing to face the time with no attention, and the time into loneliness, and the time by myself, because I knew the value of that silence, if you want to call it, was way greater, and it had a long-term benefit. But it is a dark place to go into sometimes, to think, oh my God, am I, you know, because you do, like when I broke my back and I'm in bed and I wasn't on social media, oh, you see how quickly your friends contact you and who they are. And it hurts. It does hurt. No. You're a human, you're emotional, you're like, oh God, you know, like, why haven't they reached out? Why am I not hearing from this person more?
You know, this is the problem. Loneliness as a psychological problem right now, as a mental health problem. Loneliness is huge, and one of the factors of that, I think, is that we feel that we're so connected to so many people, but actually in reality we're not at all. So there's a big culture of loneliness, and there's a big thing of loneliness going on right now. I do think it's important to point out that you know, it's very interesting when we start to think about silence, because I think we'd almost have to identify noise first. So I classify noise in three ways. Physical noise, right? So if I can't sleep, it's usually because of one of three things. Either physical noise, so in your case, when you did your back, you know, obviously I'd say that was physical noise, pain, right? Yeah. You had physical noise in the body. You've got environmental noise. So if somebody's having a party next door, then I can't sleep because there's environmental noise around me. And then we've got that mental noise. And that's a noise that I think that we're trying to avoid more than anything else, is that mental noise. Because in fact, environmental noise, we can almost break down into, if somebody's having a party, that's annoying. You know, so noise there, I don't want that noise. But I don't want silence either. Environmental silence is actually really scary. And it's really normally a sign of danger. Yeah. So if you imagine, if you're walking through the forest or you're walking through the jungle and all of a sudden everything goes, and it's silent, what would you think?
Yeah, exactly.
It's fear, right? Because something, you know, the birds have stopped singing, you know, all the animals have stopped making noise, and it's silence. No, that's not good, because that's danger. So what we often do, and a lot of people are getting into this now, you know, something like a podcast. You put a podcast on before you go off to sleep. You listen to a story or an audio book or something like that. Within 5 minutes, you're gone. Because again, when you go back to that tribe, you've got 250 people in that tribe. You don't want to go to sleep because then you're in danger. If somebody else is awake and up as well, then that means you're safe. So that noise actually represents safety, right? So you can use that noise. So a lot of people now, you know, there's also those apps where you've got Calm, where the raindrops or the crickets or the whatever it is, you know, they're all noise, but help you get down into that, to almost switch off that mental noise. So that brings us to that mental noise. That's really ultimately what we're trying to deal with, is that internal voice. You know, I always imagine you walk in on a young child and they're playing and they're often talking to themselves, chatting away to themselves about this, that, and the other. And it's fantastic. At some point, we internalize that.
Yeah. I do that still now.
And then that's it. But that's what we do. We're all of us. We have this internal voice, the voice inside that we think is very much us. And we're governed by that. And again, as I pointed out before, this is the thought process. This is thought. And it's not who we are. You know, it's an aspect of who we are. In the same way, my eyes, I see, my mind thinks, my ears, my hair, they're all aspects of who I am, but that's not who I am. So can you change your relationship to that voice? Because I guarantee if you spoke to your friends in the same way that you spoke to yourself, you wouldn't have any friends left, right? So this voice inside is, you know, we have this thing called a negative bias where we're constantly going towards negativity, you know? So when we're in our thought process, there's inevitably what happens to us, and depending on our trauma history, Some people it's much more than others, because you'll constantly be going towards security and the dangers that may be lying ahead. Yeah. I'm not interested in the good things, because if I don't get the good things today, I can get it tomorrow. But if there's a danger that lies ahead, it may, Mark Twain said, I've had a very stressful life, most of which has never happened. So the dangers that may or may not lie ahead are the things that we're often drawn towards.
Totally.
So when we're looking now, we're thinking, right, of the noise. There's certain external environmental noises actually really quite helpful. But the noise that we really have to the challenge is, and the silence that we're really trying to get, is this internal silence, to stop the voice in the head. And it's not constant,
It's more of a, like, if I was to really actually think about it and say, what would it be? It wouldn't be the word silence, actually. It would be stillness.
No.
Because it's the stillness for me. There's a stillness from me, but there's still movement within the body, and there's still things happening, but I'm the kind of sat back and I'm observing rather than being involved and emotionally challenged. So there's a still perspective on what's going on. But it isn't, like you say, it isn't, because there'll be a thought that comes, and I'll never forget. It's one of the first times I started meditating. And I remember thinking, right, okay, you sat there and I'm like, hands like this, and I'm just there, fine. And I remember thinking, why the hell am I thinking about fish finger sandwiches? And it was literally, this mind was fish, and I'd not had fish finger sandwiches, Howard, for we're talking back then, would have been a good, when I first started meditating, so it would have been a good 10 years. And this fish finger sandwich was going around my head, and I'm like, it's got to stop. And I ended up laughing at it, but it was so significant because it was just constant, and it didn't mean anything, and it was trying to take me back into childhood, and then and hunger, and I wasn't hungry, and I saw all of the attachments to a fish finger sandwich, and then I'm thinking of what bread I wanted and what butter and whether I could go get them, and I'm like, this is excessive, and it's a sandwich. And it was just really placed it for me, where it was just like, this has got, and that kind of it taught me, as well as it was distracting, it taught me how emotionally charged I was by my thoughts.
But not only the thoughts that you have, the thoughts that you've had throughout your entire life, because this is what we call samkhara, which are the kind of the lingering thoughts, the thoughts that are trapped in the body. Because we have, again, if we think about the kind of the evolutionary process, that when we experience danger, we need to understand it not only mentally, we need to understand it on a physical level as well, on a cellular level. So a lot of our memories are trapped within ourselves. And then when we start to do something like meditation, it's not that, it's not a psychoanalytical process. There's a psychological process that happens, which is almost a release. And I think most people have had a very similar experience once they're meditating, like, why am I thinking of my kitchen wallpaper? Or it's like, when I was 5 years old, or that point when I was walking my dog in the park when I was 8. You know what I mean? So those things, and that's great, because we want that to run its course, because in an ordinary setting, when we're not in danger, the chemicals are running their course through the body. But as soon as we're in a situation where there's any kind of trauma, and remember, trauma doesn't have to be this great big thing, it's very subjective. So what we hold on to, it may be quite strong and relevant to ourselves, but makes no sense to anybody else, and most of the time doesn't make much sense to us, but we hold on to it. And the beauty of meditation is that you can allow that to run its course. You can let it release. You can let so much in the body go. One of the things you were talking about was, trying to use a term for this experience that we have. And of course, we make sense through language, but we're limited by the language that we use, And it's also the etymology of words. I mean, something like stillness or silence or space or whatever it is, as soon as we say any of these words, we're back up in our heads,
I'm studying, and this is why at the moment related to natural law and the law of I, and the etymology power of words has, since I started this in November, I am shocked, like really shocked, on the way that we use the language that we do, and how we have no idea what we're doing, because energetically and metaphysically we're creating our environments by the language and the words that we use.
Absolutely.
And we're imprisoning ourselves. There's actually a deeper conversation I'm going to go, if you might want to join that show as well, actually, but there's going to be a really long conversation on the etymology that I'm fascinated by it, but it's a trap, because if you don't know what the words mean, and they said that, you know, two types of words, you're like, oh, it's very similar. If it doesn't spell it the same, it doesn't mean the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, the words, again, if we go back to some of the yogic traditions, you know, words and symbols are a manifestation of divinity. So the vibration of a word is very, very important. This is why, you know, I'm not going to go like cultural appropriation around a lot of the kind of the Hindu, you know, Om signs and various words that have used in Sanskrit and so on. We're using them the whole time, sticking them on t-shirts, sticking them on yoga mats, and people are walking all over them and doing all this stuff. This was sacrilege. You know, the words themselves were the manifestation of the divinity. You break down divinity into these various aspects, and they come into words and letters. In many cultures, you wouldn't put a newspaper down on the floor and walk on it. You don't do that. It doesn't. So the words are so important. Just on this, and we'll go back to the breath, because this kind of links in, you know, for me, when we're in meditation and we're using the breath, it's really kind of the movement of spirit within the body. And again, I don't want to get caught up in too much of the words, but when we use the word spirit can also mean to be breathed into by God. Right, so there is a sense of breath. In fact, when we trace the word, in most languages, it's the same word for breath as it is for spirit, because in Sanskrit, the word is prana. With a small p, it's breath, and a large p, it's universal life force or spirit, right? We've got ruha in Hebrew. We've got pneuma in Greek. We've got chi in China. It's the same word for spirit as it is for breath. The only language that really doesn't have it is the same in Russian and Scandinavian language. In French, you go through a whole list of languages. It's exactly the same word. And in English, we don't have it. We've got breath and we've got spirit, right? But when we start to think of the breath as that movement within the body, or life force within the body of spirit, and start to go with that, and this is where we're back with the breath again, and the flow that comes from the breath, the inhalation that comes in, and the exhalation that goes down, and it goes down, and it goes down, and you start to go with it, and you go deeper. You're literally going deeper into that river again. The thoughts are there, but the breath takes you down, and then as you go down, there's a sense of moving into the, again, I don't want to use the words, but stillness, you know, and that it's so profound. You know, and we just need some of that in our life. And we don't need to be sitting in meditation for long periods of time. But if you start to understand a little bit of that, it completely changes your whole relationship with thought, changes your whole relationship with your entire existence, with your everything around you, with your language, you know, the language and everybody around you, everything around you.
Yeah,
that's where it becomes so powerful. So the breath really has. In ancient traditions, the breath was that thing. It was always back with the breath, the inhalation and the exhalation. You know.
You just booked yourself in for sound and language, by the way. I hope you know.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I don't know if I'm qualified. But,
no. I've got some amazing people coming on that, and I think you would make it a great.
As I said, I'm always up for stuff.
Yay, that's what we want for talking.
Yeah.
What we'll do is, I think we'll leave it there for today. I want to say thank you so much for coming on and being open about your awkwardness about your movement. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I've got to stand up now. When I stand up, I'll feel it. As soon as I start moving, that will be the thing. No, but thank you, Nat. Yeah, been lovely talking to you, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, we will. I'm having you back. This is going to go out to actually the guys at Water Bear, one of the colleges down in Brighton, and also Point Blank Music College. This is going content to them, basically, just to give them another perspective while they're being creative at the moment and they're not being able to go out and do what they usually do and get to play and, you know, be at the parties they love. This is an alternative to what you can be doing in the silent period when the music is not playing.
Breathe.
You guys know. Go on. What were you going to say? Sorry,
I just said breathe.
Oh, breathe. Yes, breathe.
Yeah,
Make sure you've taken the tips. Try sticking some tape on the mouth, seeing if you can See, not anybody else. Just do it on your mouth. Don't do it on anybody else. It's a bit weird. But yeah, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do so. Whether you're on the Nat Rich channel or the Talkwords for I Am Sound Academy, please do subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And what else was there? Oh yes, we've got the app. I've got a little note here of what I need to say. We have the app in the App Store. So if you want to go and get I Am Sound Radio from the App Store, it's from either Play Store or the Google App Store. You can download the app, and then we will have everything on our Roku TV channel by the end of the month, which I'm very excited about. And what else was there? Oh, yes, I haven't got the link, but if you go to greatconnectionfestival.com, so that's the greatconnectionfestival.com, on the 31st of January, we're going to be going deep for a whole day on the Great Connection Festival. It's all around mental health. There's loads of different speakers for the day. I'm hosting the music section, and then we'll be going on air that night. I think that's the night of sound and language, actually, which we will confirm later. And tomorrow we have we have gangs tomorrow with a guy called Respect, which I think is a great name. Respect, cool. And he's going to be going into the kind of East London, should we say, East London, North London, South London gang mentality, and it's quite a raw subject. So if you're around and you're not doing anything else for lockdown, please let us know, join us, and it'd be great to see you all tomorrow. And Howard, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, my pleasure.
And we will have you back.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nat. Okay.
No worries. Bye, guys.
Bye.